it was really exciting to see Solana here in Mexico City. I feel that it marks before and after, really, in the Solana ecosystem in Mexico and Latin America. And one of the key messages is that Solana moves like a startup, not like a political company.
Give me a sense for how many people were there, topics that were discussed, why Apex in Mexico City as well.
Solana Foundation has a startup vibe, and the Ethereum Foundation has a political vibe.
So Prospera is again, network society that was leveraging the SEDE law, which is basically a law that was passed in Honduras.
Latin America is a great continent to be authoritarian. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Frontera, where you get your weekly news of what's happening in crypto in Latin America. I'm Ab, co-founder and CEO of Bando. I'm with my good friend Kush, also co-founder and CEO of Odyssea Labs. My man, how's everything?
Man, I mean, look at where I am right now. I can't complain. Doing really
You're
well.
in paradise. Where's that?
I am currently in Roatan, Honduras, at Prospera, which is a network society that's forming under the SEDE laws here. But yeah, man, I mean, we both had like a super exciting week and just really excited to dive into it. So why don't we start off on your end, Up? I mean, I know you guys just wrapped up Solana APEX, and we've got have a lot of features on that on this next Frontera. So why don't we start there and then dive into everything else that's happening currently in the world of Latam.
Yeah, man. What happened last week on Friday? It was on Friday, February 7th. Solana was in Mexico City doing Solana APEX, and this was an event that is intended to ignite the community of Solana in different parts of the world. And it was really exciting to see Solana here in Mexico City. I feel that it marks before and after, really, in the Solana ecosystem in Mexico and Latin America, and also on the level of projects that we are doing. Just before recording, you were asking Rib, our researcher and growth analyst here at Bando and Espacio Crypto, what did he think about Solana Apex? And I think that this is a common comment in the community that now the bar raised. And it's going to be hard to say, okay, this event was a success or this event was really crappy. I think that it's going to be really, really hard to say that events are successful because of the quality of Solana Apex. And I want to talk a little bit about a couple of key insights that I saw during the event. The first one is that we had top speakers in the industry. There were people from Foundation Capital, one of the most reputable VCs in this industry, also people from Pantera Capital, that it's also one of the most reputable VCs in crypto. There were people from the Solana Foundation. There were people from great teams as Etherfuse, that soon we're going to have David, the CEO of Etherfuse, talking about what they're building in Mexico. Basically, they've tokenized the treasury bills, the Mexican treasury bills that are called CETES. And that's a huge step in a regulatory side and also on a technological side. It's super, super cool. The community was super hyped up. And one of my favorite moments of the event, I was talking to an engineer in Solana, and I was talking about my experience building in crypto. And one of the key messages is that Solana moves like a startup, not like a political company. And it was really cool that this guy told me, yeah, man, we want to fucking win. That's the whole point of Solana. And it's really hard not vibing with that point. When you hear that, is like, obviously, I also want to win. So there's a cultural fit really, really relevant. So that's a quick roundup of what happened on Solana. Curious to hear your thoughts, questions that you
How many?
have.
So give us like there were a bunch of like industry leaders that were there. Give me a sense for how many people were there, topics that were discussed, why Apex in Mexico City as well.
Yeah, perfect. We published our blog that basically it's a video of Lalo going around and describing what's happening in Solana Apex. And answering your first question about why Mexico City, it was we talked a lot with the team in Solana, and they told us that this was long overdue. And why is that? Because I think that the Mexican ecosystem was kind of abandoned or was not nurtured a lot from the Solana community, and this was a way to adjust that. It was really relevant to see the Solana community going around and having all these all this relevance and the size of the community. There were, for example, Shiraz, that's the payments lead at the Solana Foundation, was here. Also, the Deepin lead was here at Mexico City. Eli, that is in charge of events. So the person that runs Breakpoint, these huge conferences, she was responsible for also this event. So basically, Solana didn't send their all-star team to Mexico, and the topics that were discussed, there were three main pillars: payments, stablecoins, and dipping. So there were different conferences around those topics. I was in a panel with Pantera Capital, with Decaf, and with someone else that I don't remember. So yeah, the size of the event was around of someone from the Solana Foundation told me that there were around of 700 registers and around of 500 people went through the door. So it was packed. It was really packed. Yeah. So the event, also the venue was really cool. The venue was an hacienda, like a classical Mexican hacienda. You can see it in the vlog that I'm showing on screen. Just Lalo talking over there, and there were a lot of people from Espacio Crypto, a lot of people from different communities. So yeah, I don't know. I think it was the best event ever in Mexico, just competing with ETH Mexico, the hackathon that ETH Global ran a couple of years ago. But yeah, this is a different scale of event.
That's huge, man. That's huge. So tell me more about why they felt that this was a long overdue event. I know at one point there was Super Team Mexico that had sort of been a little bit sort of put to the side, wasn't a very active community. For those that aren't familiar, Super Team is basically Solana's way of engaging with local communities in Brazil and India, throughout the world. Super Team Mexico, I think, had a lot of energy throughout a lot of the last bull market. Then as the bear rolled along, things started to roll over and slow down a little bit. But now it seems to be sort of this rekindling and re-energizing space coming into the Solana ecosystem. So tell me more about kind of why they feel Mexico is an exciting and interesting market, specifically, payments, stablecoins, and DePIN, right? I mean, I definitely have like some thoughts here, but you were there and have a lot of sort of firsthand insights. So give us a sense for, why these three categories and why Mexico in particular.
Perfect. So why Mexico in particular? Because it's a huge market that it was really funny because they told me we know three teams in Mexico are Decaf, Etherfuse, and Bando. And I told them it's really funny that two of those teams are founded by non-Mexican people. And that's a pretty good indication on how far away from the community they were, the Solana team. And now they are gonna their whole objective is igniting the community in this country, that it's one of the most important markets in the world. It's the second most important market in Latin America. We're really close to the US, so there are a lot of builders from the US that come here to either work remotely or try to solve local problems. So that was the main focus, like igniting the community and then making sure that the community stays active after they leave. And I've been talking to them a lot, and I think it's super relevant, that focus, because we've seen different communities go through Latin America, run events, and then just leave. And that's really hard because I mean, you and me have been working in crypto for a long time, and we've both seen how different projects come and then leave, and the communities are just left there hanging. And I really hope that the Solana team keeps executing, and I think that they're gonna do so. I'm confident on that. And payments, stablecoins, and dipping were the key topics because payments and stablecoins are kind of obvious. Why stablecoins is Mexico is the Mexican USA remittance market is the largest remittance corridor in the world. It processes more than $60 billion each year, and for that corridor, crypto is just obvious. It must happen on crypto. So that's the first one. The second one around payments, it's because Mexico has a really advanced payment industry. We have immediate settlement. And the thing is that there are a lot of teams building in payments. And also, it's a great way to test international payments. Not only because of the corridor between Mexico and the US, but also Mexico is really well connected with other areas around the world. So, solving for Mexican payments in like B2B payments and international payments is something critical with a big market opportunity. And dipping, this was also really interesting for me because what I heard about dipping being so relevant is that in countries where infrastructure networks don't work that well, those countries are the best ones to run dipping. Why? Because, for example, in Mexico, there's a monopoly in telecommunications with Telcel. Basically, they own most of the telecommunications coverage around Mexico. And if your location is not covered by Telcel, basically you're screwed. There's nothing, basically nothing you can do to get access to internet and other services. So in those countries that have good technological adoption but not enough coverage, it's a really great position for dipping projects. So that's why Mexico, and that's why the three verticals that I decided.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely agree that those are fundamentally, I think, where crypto has its highest PMF, right? And particularly relevant to the way, and I think the general ethos of this whole sort of space, right? I was just explaining to a friend here in Prospera about DeFi, for example, and she has no insights on crypto. And I said fundamentally, the ethos of crypto is trying to identify where there are large centralized vectors of energy and capital and knowledge, and being
Yeah.
able to say, hey, these archaic industries, let's say like payments, for example, banking, the reason they are so powerful is because 100 years ago, when we didn't have as much information that was propagated equally, that now the internet has functionally unlocked. Um, Having the capacity to be able to have this call from Mexico City to Honduras, through a seamless communication. Not only that, to be able to transmit value. If you were to send me, USDC through crypto, I'd be able to get that within, fractions of a second, right? And so I think that that's fundamentally the value proposition of crypto. And I think that's where founders can find the most interesting problems to tackle is, hey, there is this market right now that is currently being monopolized by a set of actors or an individual actor. And leveraging these peer-to-peer networks that allow us to disintermediate these industries, we can fundamentally bring a totally new revolution to the way that these sort of payments are done, to the way that money is transferred, to the way that physical networks are sent as well. We know in Mexico, right? There's infamously we've got kind of Carlos Slim and his whole Claro network, and a lot of telecom players that are aggregating a lot of value throughout the region, man. So, and I know you guys at Bando, very quickly rolled out Solana as well, right? And so walk me through like that process. You didn't previous to Apex had Bando on Solana, but within a day or two of the conference ending, I saw a tweet of yours that went viral that said, "Hey, we ship, we want to win as well, and now we're live on Solana." So walk me through kind of the product process, why you decided to launch Bando on Solana, and what benefits you see to Bando as a startup as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, the vibe was just so strong, man. And also, not only the vibe, that was the first part. The second part was that our users at Bando were asking a lot if we were able to include more off ramps to our solution. So that's why we started investigating, and we tried to include several other off ramps, like other off ramp networks. We tried with Arbitrum, Optimism, and several others, and it was basically really hard to do it. And what we realized, like being in Apex. I was in Slack and I messaged my co-founder Luis, that is our CTO, telling him, dude, what should we do to include Solana? And he was like, let me check. And he hacked it through the weekend. And on Monday we activated Solana for off ramping. And it was just, I mean, it's like when you have this huge amount of energy, you need to maximize it. You need to make sure that the product is good enough to maximize that. And it was great. This is one of the tweets that we put telling that that Solana was now active in Bando. And also, I quote tweeted saying like, dudes, we are serious about it. We are enabling this the off ramp of Solana in Mexican peso through Bando, and this also went kind of viral. I'm not used to these numbers, like 157 tweets. You're a star, so maybe you're used to this. 30 retweets, and I know you know that you're starting to get viral when someone launches a meme coin out of your tweet. So someone
Did
launched
that
an
happen?
yeah, and I didn't know what to do.
That's
Someone launched
hilarious.
an MXN meme coin on pump.fun, and I thought, okay, that this is like the next level of virality. If this goes like if this meme coin explodes, then like we are on legendary levels of virality. It didn't went through, luckily, because I'm not sure if I want to be viral out of a meme coin more when we're building this type of product right now. But yeah, it was a crazy weekend. We were able to hack it through and deliver it fast. And Solana has these vibes of they tweeted, I think that yesterday or today, just build it. And that was it for us. I asked Luis, my co-founder, dude, what do we need to do to launch Solana? Okay, let's just build it. And a really great story to launch a product on the same week.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the kind of nature and culture within the Solana ecosystem, right? Which is just ship fast. I think it's very inspired as well, kind of by the VC love it or hate it sort of mentality, right? That Solana comes to the table and they say, hey, we're going to break the conventions when it comes to the way that crypto is rolled out, to the sort of architecture decisions we make within our blockchains. Because fundamentally, again, it all comes back to the user. What does the user want? Fast, cheap, easy to use transactions, right? A lot of these other networks don't provide that today. They're slow, they're complicated. There's 100 chains that users can use. The other day, I was checking out this sort of payments protocol, and literally it was like 50 different USDCs. I tried off ramping the other day, and it was a really, really complicated process. Because I had accidentally sent bridged USDC and not native USDC, right? And again, these are the types of problems. Yes, they exist in Solana, but when we add in the complexity of all the different chains into that, for the user, it ends up being a less than desirable experience. Bando is all about making crypto spendable, right? That's kind of the ethos that you guys are repeating over and over and
Yeah.
over again. The only way we make that happen is by making it super easy, super seamless. And I definitely think, there's been a really big discourse around kind of Ethereum's future and so forth. So I'd love to discuss a little bit of that as well. I mean, you guys were born in the Ethereum ecosystem. You've been very deeply integrated there. Espacio Crypto as a community has pumped
Yeah.
out a bunch of really awesome builders into Ethereum. So walk me through just like philosophy, vibe, difference that you felt, especially as you were, involved as well in kind of making this project happen and producing some of Apex as well. So just walk me through the vibes between being really deep in the Ethereum ecosystem and now kind of introducing the Solana vision and philosophy. And what's the difference for you as a builder?
That's a really hard question because Ethereum is really close to my heart, but as a CEO, you need to make the decision that's gonna make you win. And that's the main difference. I don't know how you feel about this, but recently Ethereum communities are more political communities than product communities. I don't know, just going through the governance forums, it's basically pure politics. DAOs turned out into into political parties, and even the discourse in Twitter is, I find it so weird. People telling like, "Oh, I was re-elected to be delegate of I don't know what," and it's like, what the hell? I mean, build a product instead of having a political thing, right? So that's weird. The second part is that I think that in Ethereum, a lot of people have abused the name Ethereum and said, I don't know. For example, if you do, I'm gonna say something stupid. If you do Ethereum Ecatepec, that it's a town in Mexico, for the outside world, that sounds the same as Cardano, Mexico. So I'm not really bullish on those type of communities because they do not ship product. And the best way to build a community is to ship product and ship community. So that's my critic on Ethereum, and it's kind of bold. And on Solana, obviously we need to go deeper. And actually, my co-founder Luis, our CTO, is going to Mountain DAO next week in Salt Lake City. That it's a huge meetup of a bunch of Solana folks, and maybe we can bring him in from there next week, just like a 5 minutes recap on what's happening there. I'll tell him. And I don't know, the Solana vibes are just shipping and winning. And I don't know, man, how do you feel about it? Because it's really hard as a founder not wanting those two things. If you tell me ship and win or lobby and politics, I'll always ship and win.
Yeah, I think in Ethereum's defense, right, and this is oftentimes the arguments that are brought up to steelman the case for Ethereum, is that Ethereum is providing a much more credibly neutral platform for mass coordination to happen, right? Yes, unfortunately, the notion of credible neutrality ends up bringing in, to some extent, a lot of decentralization vectors. That's where the politics angle comes in. And again, I think to steel man a little bit of like why Ethereum and why Solana, and these are not mutually exclusive, by the way. Like I personally am I'm a big believer in believing multi-chain systems, letting the free market decide who's going to win. But I think there's a lot of value to Ethereum sort of robustness, both from a sort of technical architecture standpoint, right? When we think about the plurality of, let's say optimism goes down, right? You can still use Base, you can still use Arbitrum, you can still use Polygon, you can still use these other chains. However, again, from a user experience, it ends up being a really fragmented sort of way of being able to navigate that ecosystem. The internet, in part the Web 2, Web 1 internet is built through these decentralized systems. Each of them is totally independent, and therefore, if the internet goes down in Mexico, it doesn't go down in Honduras, right? And so I think there's a lot of value to having these modular architectural systems and decisions, whereas these monolithic systems that Solana is developing, they end up dividing. Whereas these monolithic architecture systems, they end up delivering on fast and cheap. But again, one might argue that there are centralization vectors that do impact the long-term success of Solana, right? By that said, I think what it comes down to is you either get to make a decision, right? Do you want to capture the market, capture the mind share, capture the liquidity as well, and then build sort of resilience and decentralization, which I think is Solana's approach. I was chatting with a friend recently about Solana versus Ethereum, and they were just saying, oh, all Solana has is meme coins, and there's no real building going on there, and so forth. I said, that's true, but our most primitive part of our brain is degenerate, right? And it seeks these short-term incentives. And what Solana has done is they've captured a lot of liquidity in the ecosystem. Have you ever tried off-ramping, like taking your funds off of Solana and then going into Ethereum? That generally doesn't tend to be the case. Once you're in an ecosystem, you end up staying there, right? And like it's a pain in the ass. It's expensive to bridge in and out of different, ecosystems, particularly from an EVM to an SVM to a MoveVM. There are some costs implied in that. There's time implied in that as well, and it's generally a hassle. So I do think there's, something again to be said for how do we build worlds where we aren't relying on any single one technology, but rather bring a plurality of solutions. If for you as Bando right now, you want this super fast, super scalable blockchain, cool. Like maybe Solana makes a lot of sense for you right now, right? If you also want sort of a decentralized distributed architecture, great. Ethereum also makes sense for you. And the nice thing is these aren't mutually exclusive, and you can choose which one you are able to deliver for your end user. You can choose how you present these different options to your users as well, which is something I'm personally really excited by. Like I think interoperability across the EVM is a big topic of conversation, and abstracting away all the complexities too.
Yeah, and something important also is how are incentives distributed. This is one of the key messages that I got out of Solana APEX. The Solana Foundation has a startup vibe, and the Ethereum Foundation has a political vibe. So that's a hard one because regardless of the credible neutrality and all of those sorts, I think it's important to, as a startup, you don't have 15 years to be credibly neutral. And also, I think that decentralization is a spectrum. If all startups were decentralized, there won't be any startups because there's by definition a startup must be centralized because the founders are this type of people that are crazy and that are willing to go through pain to materialize a vision. And a lot of founders don't go through that, and a lot of us fail. uh, but it's hard to do that. And if everything would be decentralized, then we would be in the welfare state, like in communism, basically, right? So it's really hard to get that. And this is a spicy take because of Vitalik's post on communism that went viral, and everyone now it's pretty critical about Ethereum. But you know, if credible neutrality makes you move slower than needed, I think that we need to be critical about that.
Yeah, particularly in like sort of competitive market dynamics, right? And again, I think it's sort of a short-term versus long-term game. Ethereum's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
Solana is definitely sort of doing a really, really awesome job. I think this whole like narrative around Vitalik clearly shitposting, saying "Make communism great again," and everyone getting all flared up and sort of upset about it genuinely just comes down to people needing sort of an outlet to express their frustration, right? But listen, man, again, I think it's important for founders to consider any ecosystem that is
yeah,
going to help them win. Chow from Alliance recently had this post that sort of went somewhat viral as well, where he was saying, I can't in good conscience recommend that people build anywhere else other than Solana, right? We know they have a very close relationship with Solana as well. So makes sense that he'd naturally be wanting, and that's where really successful products have come out of the Alliance community, right? So whether that's Pop Top Fun or Moonshot and so forth. So, again, it just comes down to how do we ensure that as many ecosystems win and we have a plurality of options for users that are easy to use and give users the value that they need.
yeah. Yeah, well, that was Solana. We also obviously need to be like have this critic mindset to identify what's the best thing to do for our product and for everything that we're building. So we'll do that. We'll make the decisions to maximize the impact we can do in the good sense. And dude, tell me about Prospera. I saw you also in this tweet presenting something. Tell me about it, please.
Yeah, so Prospera is again, network society that was leveraging the SEDE law, which is basically a law that was passed in Honduras that said that there can be a number of economic free zones that exist throughout the country. These economic free zones have a higher degree of legal authority, tax authority as well throughout Honduras. Unfortunately, as tends to happen whenever we have things that are too good to be true, a few of these cities were not utilizing their benefits to ways that were maximally successful for the wider Honduran society, and so there have been, some degrees of criticism that have arisen in Prospera. Um, I went to participate in the Crypto Cities Week, where we were basically discussing, how do we build new cities that are centered around leveraging the very cutting edge of cryptography, thinking about both, payments and governance and legal and regulatory structures as well. I gave a talk where I just walked through my thesis on why we need to catalyze more innovation in Latin America, discuss the need for better tech-enabled solutions, whether it's healthcare or education, trust in governments, among a number of other verticals in society in Latin America. It just presented very clear, as factual as possible evidence with the thesis that technological progress leads to economic development, leads to social progress, right? And it really is the thesis that I believe, and our sort of meme at Odisea is Latam Act, right? Accelerate Latin America. Why do we rely on that meme is, again, because we truly believe that what we need to do as a region is to accelerate as much as possible technologies that we're bringing to the market so that Latin America can go from being, a region where poverty and financial exclusion and inflation and so forth impact a substantial amount of the population. Over 50% of people in Latin America don't have access to banking services, right? Like that's insane. And so how do we, in the same way that we previously discussed that we basically leapfrogged SMS messages and went straight into WhatsApp, how do we do this as well for financial services, government services, our healthcare systems, and so forth as well? So I just walked through and presented some findings and some theses around how we do this at Odisea as well. But yeah, man, overall, super happy to be here. I think Prospera is doing a really great job of basically fostering a strong innovation ecosystem here in Honduras. They're being very cognizant as well of how the local community is being integrated. They're thinking very forward as well around, okay, what is the future of biotech? What is the future of neurotech? How do we think about crypto and law and all these other sort of frontier insights across society, right? So super happy to be here. I'll be here for about 2 weeks in total. Roatan, for those that haven't been, it's a beautiful island off the coast of Honduras. Takes about an hour to drive from end to end, so it's pretty small. Great scuba diving here, lots of wind sports as well. Really, really lovely people. The weather's amazing. The sunsets, as you can tell if you're watching the video, really, really special too, man. But no, I'm super happy to be here, and I think again it just ties into Latin America is really turning up the heat here. I can confidently say if I look at Asia and Africa and much of the global South, I haven't quite seen, and I'm incredibly biased, of course, and I don't have as many data points, but I can, with a very high degree of certainty, say that I haven't seen other regions adopt as much of a pro-tech, pro-innovation stance that I think ultimately is what's going to lead us to more prosperous and more egalitarian society. So super stoked to be here. Definitely for the audience, check out Prospera, do some research, and would invite people to really think about how do we really flip the narrative. I think that nation states are in a state of decline, particularly in Latin America, right? I showed a statistic where people trust the church more, they trust social media more than the governments in the region, right? So clearly we have a sort of governance crisis here in Latin America. I think El Salvador is an exception to that, where we've seen Bukele reach over 90% approval ratings, but that isn't the common trend. Overall, we
Yeah.
see government ratings going down.
But I think that El Salvador went so like crappy that it was the pendulum needed to swing, right? Everybody hated basically the political establishment, and San Salvador was the most dangerous city in the world. So, I mean, when you're at that position, there's not you're literally not, you have nothing to lose, literally. So that's why Bukele's adjustment is so incredible. And yeah, man, super exciting on everything that's happening in Latam, Prospera, Apex. I think that there's gonna be a lot of things popping up in Latin America in the upcoming months, and like in from like an egoistic way, I'm really happy that I think that we are gonna be at the center of that, like pushing this. People that comes to the podcast, they're gonna be the ones that are pushing this thing. So let's do it. And just one relevant news this week that we thought it's important. What do you think about this? 90% of transactions in Brazil, of crypto transactions in Brazil, are related to stablecoins, according to the central bank. I mean, just reactions to this. What do you think?
I'm not even surprised. Yeah, I mean, we just talked about how like payments and stable coins are 2 out of the 3 major themes for Solana APEX. Clearly, again, as we've just like harped on for ages from the very beginnings of these explorations that we have on this podcast, like stablecoins are here to stay. It's clear that the Brazilian government, won't really be able to sort of like intercede and interject in the development of the stablecoins. We had Mila Riojan, where we discussed kind of the power of community currencies as well. So really, really exciting. There was another piece of news that we have in this week's Frontera as well that spoke about how the Brazilian government wants to pass legislation that bars anyone who has been found in being abusive in their homes or has violated sort of personal freedom to restrict their use of stablecoins. Again, this is where we start getting into like, okay, to what extent should we be policing the use of these stablecoins? To what extent should we be allowing people to transact freely? It's one of the fears with CBDCs as well, because obviously if people are sort of having ill intentions and not being sort of pro-social, right, and actually harming others, there should be a consequence in society. And also, it's like, what if, let's say, for some reason you belong to a political party where you don't agree with the other person's political ideology, and therefore you bar their sort of use of funds, right? So it could be a slippery slope. And yeah, you've got the article here. What do you think about this sort of 90% use of stable coins, this type of legislation, everything that's happening in Brazil right now?
So there are two things here. The first one is that you remember this dollar milkshake theory. I don't remember who wrote it. I don't remember if it was Nick Carter or some guy like that, saying that basically if the dollar is the strongest currency in the world, and with stable coins is the best way to export the dollar. And if you put the dollar to compete to any other fiat currency, maybe the dollar will win. So stable coins are the best ways to is the best way to export the dollar, and kind of like included like a virus in society, because it goes viral, and then suddenly dollar app is everyone uses dollar app, and everyone uses Nubank also. An important, a really interesting thing of Apex is that I met the leader of Fireblocks in Latin America, and he told me like, dude, we have the top clients, we have the Nubanks, we have the banks, we have the Bitsos, and they process around of 20% of all crypto transactions, Fireblocks. That's insane. And in Brazil, the demand for dollars is huge. 90% of crypto transactions are dollars. So I can see as I'm not a Brazilian banker, but if I were a Brazilian central banker, I could see how that's dangerous for the Brazilian real. So it's important that they get this right. And the part of the Ley Maria de Peña that gives the government the power to block transactions of stablecoins of some accounts, it's a slippery slope, because who doesn't want bad people to stop being bad? Obviously, that's something that needs to happen. But this is one of those things that, for example, before Vendetta, if you've had like a Bible or the Quran, you would be prosecuted. And suddenly you were like a normal guy from the political opposition, and they gave you a Bible out of nowhere, and then you're prosecuted. So that's a really hard thing. And the thing that I don't like about this is that Latin America is a great continent to be authoritarian, and this type of measurements, if are not well implemented, can get authoritarian really quickly. So yeah, that's my take.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we have a history of authoritarian governments for sure, right? So I just hope that we can avoid that. The other interesting thing that I think was worth highlighting in this week's newsletter as well was the Bolivian case too, right? And so how we've seen this massive uptick since we reported a couple months ago, where the Bolivian central government was essentially running out of dollars in their accounts, and therefore decided to open up the use of stablecoins and crypto, which was previously banned. What have we seen? Again, it, as you said, sort of has gone viral. The use of crypto has gone viral. And it's sort of like this pressure valve that we were just discussing, right? Is like if you restrict someone's sort of freedom and then all of a sudden you open it up, it just goes absolutely insane, right? So, people are now paying with things in crypto as well. The Bolivian central bank has opened up their doors to sort of allow people to transact more freely with stablecoin. And speaking with quite a few sort of players in the region, everyone is talking about Bolivia. There isn't a lot of infrastructure in the region, and a lot of people are sort of rushing to be able to move things forward there. So, yeah, here we go. You want to run us through the stat that we have on the screen?
Yeah, I think that that is the most surprising one. So there were 1.2 billion dollars of transactions in stablecoin in dollars in 2023 in Bolivia, and in 2024, after the regulation for stablecoins opened, it was 15 billion dollars. So 12, it's a 1,200% increase. That's crazy. I mean, this is instant product market fit. The dollar has instant product market fit in Latin America, and this is another example of that.
Yep. Show me, an industry where just by unlocking, regulation, all of a sudden you get a 1,200% increase in the use of your technology, boom, there you go, right? So, no, this is exciting. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on Bolivia and everything that's happening there. So, awesome. What are you looking forward to this week in crypto and what's coming up?
Well, what I'm looking for, I'm focused on my trip to New York. Next week, I'll be recording from New York, I'll be talking with investors and the community there. Really excited about that. Also, I think that I'm really excited for what's going to happen with Solana in Mexico after they leave. They have someone with the mission of identifying how to explode and how to expand the Solana ecosystem in Mexico. Is this guy full time for 3 months doing that research? So that's how serious they are about this. So excited about that. And how about you? What are you looking out for this week?
Yeah, so I'm spending a few more days here, and then I'll be heading off to East Denver. Super excited to be there. Super excited to connect with kind of the community as well. And I feel like both the local Latin American community that's going to be there. I'm actually going to be giving a panel on DeFi in Latin America at East Denver. So hopefully get to see some of the listeners there as well. But yeah, super excited, man. This is all steam ahead for the region, and pumped to make this happen.
Full steam. We have the tailwinds. We have the boat. We just need to have the direction. And
That's
really
right.
happy to do that with you, man. Thank you for your time as always. And go subscribe to the newsletter. We are growing. We are executing, and let's keep let's keep executing and moving forward, Latam. Thank you
Let's
and take
go.
care.
Ciao.